We're live, 8 minutes into the third hour. Max Keiser of max-keiser.com. Television programs on BBC, Al Jazeera, RT, being picked up for its second highly rated season. He is with us. He's normally here once a month. This is his scheduled monthly visit, but I had him on last week because of the quickening and his predictions coming true. After he was on, last Monday, breaking down the fact that there was clear evidence that this was financial terrorism with a 1,000-point plunge, and that the financial wolves, or hyenas, the wolf packs, were bringing down Europe, the very same central banks controlled by the big brokerage firms and investment banks like J.P. Morgan, Chase, Goldman-Sachs. Trichette's now saying, I need more power, and we need more U.S. and German money. And it's all spelled out in the headlines. Their answer to the crisis they created is more power to them enshrined in a world government. So to go over those headlines and to take your calls at 1-800-259-9231 is Max Keiser. And your calls are coming up for those that are holding. Max, good to have you back so soon.
Yeah, man, great to be back with you, Alex.
All right, my friend, you've got the floor for the balance of this segment. Lay out where we are, what's happening, what's going on in Europe, what's going on with Brown stepping down, Merkel in trouble, saying the banks are criminal, what's happening in the markets, $1 trillion not enough, they need more. What is happening right now?
All righty, well, let's talk first about Greece. Now, George Papandreou, the leader in Greece, he made a statement yesterday, over the weekend, that he's now going to investigate what role the Wall Street banks played in destabilizing his country, his economy. And this is through some back-channel communication between myself and folks in Greece, and I've been trying to steer them in the right direction, telling them this isn't a market problem, it's not a market failure, but it's fraud that's been perpetrated primarily by Wall Street banks. And my message got through, and he said yesterday that he hears words like a need for transparency and there's fraud, and now he's going to take a stand against the bankers. Now, historically, when anyone in politics has taken a stand against the bankers, they immediately put themselves into, quite a bit of danger, because the track record, if you go, even if you read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, whenever somebody, a leader of a country, steps up against the bankers, they put themselves into grave danger. Now, this would be the first time, really, that a major Western economy is taking on the Wall Street banks, but the people in Greece are out in the streets, and the leadership is responding. So he's making a statement. So we're going to see, because there's ample proof that the Wall Street banks purposefully crashed the Greek economy for short-term capital gains. So that's the first thing that's happening. What's happening in Iceland? We made a film in Iceland about the collapse of the krona, the collapse of the Icelandic economy, and I've gotten pretty friendly with a lot of the legislators up in Iceland. I'm proposing to them that they introduce some new economic citizenship, so that anyone in the world who wants to escape, for example, a U.S. citizen that wants to escape the tyranny of the U.S., can buy a passport for Iceland. And to make it competitive, so it only costs $20,000. Right now, there's only two territories or countries that offer economic citizenship: Nevis, St. Kitts, and Dominica. They're both in the Bahamas. They cost $200,000 and $75,000 respectively. I'm saying that Iceland, to be competitive, they can offer economic citizenship for $20,000, and they could get, if they get 200,000 or so, or 500,000 citizens from the U.S. to renounce U.S. citizenship and move to Iceland, they could raise $10 billion immediately to help recapitalize their country, and they are talking about rewriting their constitution in ways that are going to favor free speech and freedom of the press.
All right, let me stop you.
Anyone who is interested in freedom of the press would immediately want to emigrate to Iceland. So we have these pockets of resistance and pockets of strength from the work that you're doing directly and the work I've been doing. And now these people are starting to respond, because the global insurrection against the banking occupation is on.
Okay, the global insurrection is on. I want to interject this and get your take on it, and I want to back you up here and have you continue. This is French news agency. Bankers jailed, sued as Iceland seeks culprits for crisis. Then a week ago, we saw the Merkel headline where she called, it criminal banks causing this, though she's bought and paid for by them. So isn't that the danger with the Greek leader and others is that they see the headlights of the train coming, the global insurrection against the banking cartel. They know they can't survive unless they put it into a process, and then maybe Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan will flush down the toilet some mid-level trader, on a sub-issue like Timberwolf with Goldman Sachs. I mean, isn't there a danger of that? Because I've been all over Greek radio and newspapers as well saying arrest the bankers, arrest Goldman Sachs. And so you've been putting the pressure on. Many others have been putting the pressure on. So that's a great idea. Secondarily, how you brought up expatriates. We have the New York Times saying record numbers of wealthy people who aren't globalists leaving because they say this is the last year to get your money out, just fleeing en masse. I'd rather flee to somewhere like Iceland, but I don't even have enough money, I don't think. Like you said, if it was $200,000, then I think I'm going to stay here and go down with the ship. But for people that do want to escape and be about to be around like-minded people. But what about the arrests that they're reporting in Iceland?
That's right. One of the bankers in London, who they say, and rightfully so, was responsible for pilfering $2 billion from the economy, is now being prosecuted. And it's funny because London is where a lot of these guys go because the hedge fund industry and the banking industry laws are very lenient there, and you end up with a lot of the international banking crooks end up in London, which is one of the reasons why the real estate market in London, on the high end, the very expensive residencies, hasn't crashed so much, because they're supported by all these billionaires from these territories that they've absconded with all the wealth. So Iceland is actively going after this guy, and it's funny because in the indictment they use a very interesting word, Alex. They use the word counterfeiting. Now, this is fascinating because counterfeiting in the context of financial crime and financial terrorism, it points to what people know as naked short selling. Naked short selling is really one of the most common incendiary financial devices used to blow up an economy and to blow up a country, to blow up a company. We saw with Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, naked short selling. You're selling something, you're selling a security that doesn't exist, which is the same as counterfeiting. So now, if they bring this whole naked short selling scam to the surface and they call it what it is, counterfeiting, that would point the finger at a lot of the criminality that's gone on in the last 5 to 10 years, and really bring in all the banks, because they're all guilty of this naked short selling to a huge degree. Now, getting back to your question about, well, the leaders, once they take on Wall Street, are they going to be pressured to back down? And what we saw last Thursday on May 6th was the first unequivocal domestic financial terrorist attack in America. There was a bill in Washington to break up the big banks. They dropped the market by 1,000 points. The lawmakers pulled away. They decided not to pass that law to break up the big banks.
They also dropped the real audit the Fed and put a fake one in, according to Ron Paul.
Yeah, so they've got this weapon, which is they can crash a market. And I'm looking at today's news, and you see now that the financial terrorists are not shy about threatening to blow up people's economies and markets. For example, this is in today's news, Morgan Stanley said that if Europe doesn't engage in full-blown quantitative easing, which means that they would buy back their own bonds, which basically would mean to destroy the euro, then Morgan Stanley threatens Europe with a 1987 crash. Look this up. Morgan Stanley, full-blown quantitative easing may be needed to save Europe, or else we'll see a 1987-style crash. So they're threatening Europe with a 1987 crash. That's Morgan Stanley, a Wall Street bank, is threatening the entire Eurozone. Here's another headline about KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers are now considering whether or not they should get back into the business of the rating agencies. The Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, those rating agencies that gave their blessing to all the structured products and collateralized debt obligations that turned out to be phony. Well, now all these consulting firms, who are also equally culpable in this nightmare collapse of the economy, say, well, those guys aren't good enough at it. We're going to get into the business. So this is like really just exactly the same thing. The fact that they can, with a straight face, say that they're going to get into the rating agency business when they themselves are some of the most crooked organizations in the U.S. economy, KPMG and Pricewaterhouse, is quite laughable.